Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're at.
Very much good morning for me.
Oh, you on the West Coast?
Yeah. Well, I'm in Utah, but yeah.
Okay. Are you trying to say you're a night owl and this is early for you?
Yeah.
Okay. Ever since my college days, I've been a morning lark. I I like to get to bed by 8 and up by 4.
I'm
4:30-ish,
very,
I guess.
I'm much happier going to bed at 2 or 3 in the morning.
It's a nice thing about remote work is you can sort of play with that.
Yeah.
Hey, Phil? Ed?
Hey, how's everyone doing? Been a while.
Good.
All right.
Cool.
Hey, Nick. Hey, Evan. All right, there's Jonathan. We can get
Hey,
started in a
everybody.
minute or so. Morning, Jonathan.
Hey, Happy New Year, everybody. I've been pretty much out until this week, so I'm back.
Hmm. Yeah, totally
How's
understand.
everybody's breaks been? Yeah, good for you, Kent.
Yes.
And I will also acknowledge to the rest of the group, Kent and I have not really coordinated yet, so we're going to do our best to kind of capture things live as we go through the process here, but we'll probably have more progress for next month, is my guess. I think we'll probably have a flurry of work here once we're back together here now. So,
I'm actually just setting up I'm going to pull up the notes in just a minute. So just for, in case anybody's wondering, this is the DidWebS spec call. And the second half of this call will be transferred over to Daniel Hardman for the dossier spec. So we may as well get right into it.
Hey, Kent,
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, I've got a standing conflict with this call, so I was asking if I could do the first half of the meeting instead
Oh,
of the
yeah.
second half. Is that possible?
Yes. Thanks
It's
for
not
reminding me.
totally crucial. I could stay for the second half instead. You guys tell me.
Well, let me not make a decision unilaterally. Let me be a good chair and talk with the rest of the group. So, Jonathan, how should we handle this? Is this sort of something where we'd like make a motion and then second it and then go from there?
I don't know if we need to be that formal. Does anybody have a problem with Daniel taking the first half of the meeting for his materials, and then we can talk about did WebS for the second half of the meeting? Raise your hand if you have a problem with that. Motion passes.
Okay, awesome. I think I can maybe get done in 20 minutes instead of 30. To give you guys plenty of time. What I want to do is talk to you about the status of the dossier spec and a specific question that I have that I think the group could really help me with. I'm going to share my screen here. There's an open pull request against the dossier spec, and this is it. There's only one of them, so you could easily find it and look it up yourself. It's PR1, I guess. What is it? No, pull 14. Okay, excuse me. Um, anyway, some of this stuff is not very interesting, but there's a section here that I want to discuss. Um, I had a conversation with Sam about joint issuance logic. And so right now, this specification introduces the concept of joint issuance, which we've discussed lightly in a couple of community calls, but needs formalization. And you can see this discussion right here. Um, Sam pointed me to some academic treatment of the idea of coordinated control in multi-agent systems and how there's three different patterns that are well recognized in the literature for this. So, how do you get a bunch of parties to all endorse a dossier? And you can kind of use a leader follower strategy. You can use behavior based control. You can use virtual structure. Um, I decided that we don't actually need to formalize exactly how leader follower works and exactly how behavior control works. It's something that, how you get to success is kind of outside the scope of the spec, but I think we should describe at least one way to do it. So the simplest one to describe and understand is the leader follower. So what follows after this is a discussion of how you can use leader follower to go collect the signatures you need to endorse something in a joint issuance. I have links, by the way, Sam, to three academic sources that talk about this idea. But here's where I wanted to get to. How do you express success? However you collect your endorsements, somehow the dossier needs to say, once you've collected X number of signatures from the following kinds of people, this is how you can know you've achieved success. And so right now, the way the spec is written with this PR, I've created the idea of an M group operator and an RM group operator and a Q group operator and a fin operator. And I want to talk about these. This is the meat of what I was hoping to bring to this group. An M group operator, the way I imagined it, is basically saying signature. Five signatures from what group? The group that this operator is on, the edge group, would enumerate the potential signers. So imagine you're Supreme Court and you're trying to issue a joint opinion, and there's 9 members of the Supreme Court. Your M group would say, I need 5 signatures, and then the edges would enumerate the 9 potential signers in that kind of a scenario. But I don't know how to express the number, the arity of an M group on an edge. So here's the way I wrote it, but I think this is wrong. I was saying that this operator takes an arity argument, M, and it's expressed as an integer following the operator name. So literally the operator would be represented as that. And I think that's wrong. There's probably a correct way to do
I
it.
would suggest that you just add an arity field to the edge groups. So edge groups are labeled a key value.
Okay.
They're a block. So you
Okay.
can just add a field that is the arity.
Okay.
You don't have to complicate the operator.
Okay. That's good. That was actually what my first instinct was, but then I started doubting myself. I started thinking, well, wait a minute. That means that some of the fields are edges and some of them aren't edges. Am I contaminating the idea of an edge group?
Yeah, but these are labeled property graphs, so edges have properties.
Okay.
So so
Okay.
the inclination to try to keep it pure, the whole idea of a labeled property graph is that you can attach whatever properties you need as fields on the
Okay.
edge.
Great. I'm feeling much happier because I was feeling like I wasn't right, but I just I thank you for giving me the correction. So I'll turn the arity into a separate field. But you get the idea, basically. You have this M group operator and you say what the arity of it is, and then you enumerate. So there'd be 9 edges for the 9 Supreme Court judges, and you'd say that the arity is 5. That kind of a thing. That's what M group would be. And then RM group is the same concept, but it's for revocation instead of issuance. And I'm imagining you could stick these um, on the same edge group if you wanted. So you could draw then from the same revokers as you have signers, but you could also create a different edge group for the revocation part if you wanted. The arity for M group, I'll probably call that field M, and the arity for the RM group, I'll probably call RM or something like that. So you can have separate arities. You could possibly revoke with a smaller number than sign. Then I have this idea of a Q group, and the idea of a Q group in my mind was I'm trying to qualify those who are able to sign instead of enumerating them, or possibly in addition to enumerating them. But let's start with a simpler case of just instead. Suppose you have a petition and you want to collect a certain number of signatures, but you need to know that everybody who does sign, you can't enumerate in advance everybody who can sign, but you need to know that everybody who does sign is a registered voter in a particular region. So the idea of the Q group would be that you're saying you must satisfy the following schema with ACDC-based proof in order to be a signer. How would you do that, Sam, if you're not actually, I mean, I'm imagining sticking this on an edge group, but there would be no edges. Like you'd just say, there is an edge group, and I'm using the Q group operator on it, and there's a field next to it called schema that says, here's the schema for the proof you have to satisfy, but I'm not going to actually enumerate any edges. Is that possible?
Well, everything's possible, but according to the spec, I don't think that that's currently allowed. I'd assume it would fail because there's uh, well, you could have I don't know, maybe an empty edge group, right? You can have an edge group, but it may not have any edge blocks within the edge group, so that and we currently don't have schema on groups. We just have schema on edges. So that's a new functionality that's not in the spec right now. There might be another way to do that. I mean, it's not that if we decide that that's the way to do it, then we would have to, revise the spec in say version 1 of the spec says, because this is changing ACDC, not changing, operators, because ACDC just says you have operators, and it specifies some, but it doesn't limit the operator. So a compliant parser would accept any operator you gave it. It just wouldn't know what to do with it unless you had business logic that knew how to interpret the operator. But one way to do that would be to imply the qualification on your M group by the schema of the members of the M group, but you don't want to delineate. You want to just say there's a schema. So how are you, if you don't have an M group, where are the edges appearing for the actual endorsing members of the joint issuance, the issuing members?
Well, I would actually, I guess they would be in the edge group that contains the Q group operator, now that I think about it.
Yeah, so
no problem. Okay.
no
Yeah.
problem.
All right.
So can I just pick apart these questions real quick? I'm taking notes here. I just want to go back to the first question and then come back to the answer we just got to. So what was the first question and answer on the M group operator about arity?
Arity. So I did this funky thing, and I thought when I did it, it was probably wrong, but I said I need to somehow express that this operator has an arity associated with it. And I thought I had to stick it in the actual operator field. Sam pointed out that was wrong. So this :7 construct, that will disappear. It will just be a pure operator M group, and there will be a field next to this operator that expresses the arity argument of the operator, and that field will probably be called M since it's an M group. And that basically says this is a basically you're trying to construct M of n semantics, but the M part has to be expressed in a number in a field, and the n is given by simply counting the enumerated potential signers.
Okay. I think I've got
And
that.
in an AC/DC edge group, there is an O field that is reserved for the M array operator for that edge group, and then each edge can have a unary operator. So on an edge, there's also an O field, but that's for unary operators. You can have multiple unary operators. I can't remember if in the edge group, if the M area operator is singular or can be a list, but that, so we have to note whether we have to change that syntax or not to allow more than one M area operator. I can't remember without looking at it what the spec says for that. But
go ahead.
So I just noted that for Daniel, that's the thing we have to.
Okay,
I haven't read the
taking a
spec
note of
lately.
that. I'll check
Yeah.
this and see.
So I got that the first answer was we can just add a field next to the operator on the edge because it's just a labeled property graph, so you can add another field. Now with the Q group operator, was the question about where to put a threshold expression for each member in a group?
No, because there's not a threshold here. A Q group is the idea here is to say, I'm going to qualify this group. Basically, I'm going to let people sign only if they meet these qualifications with AC/DC based proof. So how would you express the qualification you're after? You would have to say, here's a schema that must be satisfied by everybody who signs this. And my
So
example,
for example,
go ahead.
oh, okay, you haven't. No, I was going to say, for example, the schemas could specify that the signer must have the signer's AC/DC that by which they sign must have an edge that is a VLEI. That would be a qualification. They have to be a they have to be a they have to have a VLEI, or it could be you have to have an entitlement from some authority that says that you're a citizen of a state that allows you to vote.
So
And
are we
I'm
saying
sorry
then,
to interrupt you, Daniel. I don't know if I didn't read your example because
That's perfect. That was exactly the kind of thing I was going to say.
is this leading to, I think you might have already mentioned it earlier, Daniel or Sam, is this leading to defining a schema for an edge or group of set of edges? Is
Well,
that what a Q group is, saying you essentially need to have this set of edges?
well, I mean, sort of, but the wording suggests that you're thinking about it a little differently than I am. What you're saying is the edge that any edges that you add to this edge group that has a Q group operator on it, those edges must link to proof that satisfies the following schema. That's not the same thing as saying that the edge itself has to have the schema. It's an indirection. So that's what makes it different from the simple way of expressing this that we already have the notion this edge must be a VLEI, but what we're saying here is this edge must have an edge itself that's a VLEI. Do you see the difference?
Yes, and I guess I was asking the question from the standpoint of like when you use a graph database. With the graph database like Neo4j, you can have properties in the nodes or in the vertices, sorry, the edges or the vertices. And I sort of the question that I was asking is, are we sort of specifying that the edges themselves have a schema, or or is this just saying, like you said, you're saying this edge has an edge that has this schema?
It's the second.
Okay.
So can I make a comment, Daniel, just as I'm looking at this? This is me being a little bit pedantic. Since we know that any operator that appears in the O field of an edge group is a group operator, using three letters to use the word group is provides no net information. So I might suggest that since we already know they're arity operators because they're in an edge group, that it might be like a threshold, a revocation threshold, and a qualification threshold is saying that the way you evaluate the group is that it satisfies, like we have weighted average and or the actual logical operation that you're performing, not that it's a group operator.
Okay. And how would you deal, Sam, with the distinction between potential signers and actual signers?
Well, um, uh, uh, maybe I would probably go look at a thesaurus and think of some words that represent that idea, and then use those words instead of the word group, because we know it's a group. We just need to know potential threshold versus a signer threshold, or a set of signers, something like that. Not a big deal.
No, I think you misunderstood the thrust of my question. I wasn't following this. This wasn't a follow-on to your suggestion about naming. I just assumed
Okay.
naming was great. So I'll change the naming. But what I was asking about is, let's say that 5 Supreme Court justices out of 9 do actually sign.
Yeah.
I need 9 edges here, sort of, even though only 5 of them represent signatures, right? I
Well,
somehow need to
there's two types of thresholds. There's M of N thresholds, right? And then there are absolute thresholds. I just need, like, for example, to get married, I need two witnesses. I don't need 2 of a million witnesses. I just need 2. Any 2 will do, or
Right.
any 2 qualified. That's a different type of threshold from an M of N threshold, where you have a defined set of, and you need any number of that set. Those are different types of thresholds. So those are different types of threshold operators. So some are just counting. You just count, and and the qualification is often how you limit the set, but it's not enumerated. So you don't have N is never enumerated, N is qualified. So I agree with the idea of qualified, but that just means that I have an edge group where I specify in my ecosystem governance framework potentially, what the qualification schema looks like, and then you know so this is making me think that there's a trouble that we have with semantics in this case. There's a desire to have all of the semantics self-contained in the ACDC itself. This is a natural thing for technologists to want to do. But experience says that is for real world applications a practical impossibility. And so the way we've addressed that is to say, well, there's going to be something else called an ecosystem governance framework that provides the additional semantics, so that you don't have to build all the semantics and make sure they're completely fully specified in the ACDCs themselves, because then you start to build things that are very complex to process. Whereas the context of an ACDC is defined by the ecosystem governance framework, and the ecosystem governance framework can be extremely complex, but it isn't carried around by the ACDC. And so you don't carry that burden with every transmission or presentation. You say, well, this schema for this ACDC is a registered schema in this ecosystem governance framework. So anybody who's trying to process it knows they need to understand the ecosystem governance framework, which can be arbitrarily complex and arbitrarily verbose because it is defining a context. But now, given the context, what information do you need to actually evaluate this ACDC? And that should be the way we look at it. Otherwise, we start to go down the rabbit hole of well, uh, uh, linked data approaches to trying to resolve these things, which after several years of working with linked data, convinced me that was that we needed ecosystem governance framework. So that's my suggestion: is to first decide for a given application what could be in an ecosystem governance framework, which is static, it's fixed, it applies to every ACDC that follows that framework, and then what delta is necessary to be able to verify a given ACDC in terms that is complying with that ecosystem governance framework.
I get it, but I think the line you're trying to draw doesn't apply to the specific problem that
It may not. It may not. Yeah. So
um,
I'm not understanding the problem,
the
or I'm
question
not. I don't know that I have a solution either.
the question I'm trying to ask is how do you identify potential signers? You can't say, well, I'll identify them after the fact. Once the ACDC is done, I'll say anybody who signs is one of the potential signers. That's a useless
Right. Yeah.
statement.
Yeah.
So
So
somehow you have to
so
identify in advance the set of potential signers, but those are not edges that contain signatures. That's just like AIDs of potential signers that you're enumerating.
yes. So that would be. So we'd have to define probably either. So there are two ways we could do that. One, we could define in the attribute section an attribute that is the set of potential signers that is their AIDs, or we can overload an edge and create a special kind of edge group that doesn't actually have edges that point to other ACDCs. But it might be better to put it in the attribute section because it doesn't require us to change the semantics of edges to do that.
Okay, I think I like the attribute thing. So I'm gonna say that if you need to say there's 9 Supreme Court justices that could sign this, you're creating an array of 9 AIDs in the attribute section, and the M group thing here can reference it.
Yeah, and you can make that group selectively disclosable or partially disclosable so that you can protect the privacy of those members when you're presenting the credential until people agree to or protect the confidentiality of that group. So, and the attribute section is designed for that.
Okay, great. Well, this is great. I got a bunch of very useful feedback. I'm going to go rewrite this. For everybody who's not deeply involved in this and whose eyes just glazed over for 20 minutes while we were doing this, fear not. Most of the spec is a lot more interesting than these nitty-gritty details. So I'd love to have people go either review an updated version of this PR when I change it later today, or just go read the spec. It's now got a certain amount of momentum and usefulness in what's been written, although there's plenty to do on it. And I invite anybody to participate. But I'll cede the microphone back to the Did WebS conversation. Thanks for tolerating my interjection at the beginning.
All right.
Yeah, thanks for the work.
Go ahead, Jonathan. I'm going to pull up the notes. I'll show
Yeah,
them
let's
the
just pull up the
notes.
notes. I mean, I think this is mostly just a sync up. We're probably in about basically the same place we would have been when we met in December.
Yeah,
So I know there's an open PR. Let's see, maybe we should do this more in a more systematic way. Do we have any like specific to-dos from the last meeting we need to report on?
we do. And I forgot to mention the antitrust notice at the beginning of the meeting.
Mhm.
So those who have signed the TYP agreements can participate. Everyone else is essentially an active observer. Do we have any new members? And I think we did, and some of them probably dropped by now. Let's see. So Evan and Jay, I know we've seen you in other meetings. Do you want to introduce yourselves to anybody here?
Yeah. Hi. I'm Jay. I'm one of the guys that Samuel hired. I have a background in DevOps, and I got hired to be one of the Python developers.
Nice to meet you.
I'm not sure what else to say.
Yeah, I'm Evan. I was also taken on by Sam to help out with the Prairie Foundation. So nice to meet everybody.
All right, cool. Okay, we'll move on. So this note no longer applies. All right, so the open items from last meeting, I was going to review all. I haven't done any of these yet. I took a nice vacation, haven't got to this work yet. So these will be existing open items. So to review all definitions in the document with Hank to see if we can reference from the Carry Suite glossary instead of explicitly restating them. And Hank mentioned we need to claim ownership of some of the definitions, keep the defs, and anyway, and update the TREFs. There's the spec update to use gray highlighting to indicate informative versus normative. I did start this a little bit, but there's a lot of work left to do. There's the spec and the implementation update. This is still needs to be done. It's going to be easy to do. We need to remove the default did web from the also known as and make sure that the spec is clear that the did web is only expected when it is found in an ACDC, specifically a designated alias is ACDC. So
I
we
need
got this backwards, and then we had a discussion on this last time, and then Sam clarified it for us.
I need to understand that one, Kent.
Yeah, so the discussion that we had last time, let me see if I have it here. If a did web s did duck includes a did web, you can't trust it unless the ACDC is in the Caesar stream. So that's what it was. Is the discussion last time keyed around the fact that you can't have a default did web did because you don't know what domain up front you're committing to trust just by having the cal. And so there
It,
should be an explicit trust relationship between your AID and even a did web did with a designated alias as ACDC.
if I could explain a little bit, because of the way the relationship, the defined relationship between the did web did and the did web s did, anyone can arbitrarily derive a did web did for any URN, and that may not be a permitted did web derivation. So the only way anybody knows that the did web did is a permitted derivation is that there is an ACDC in the CISA stream that so designates it as a permitted derivation. And that means
Okay.
that although the did web did itself is not secure at the same level, at least the fact that it exists is permitted by the holder, and not anything on the internet could be a did for that did web s. And so
Sure.
that's a yeah, okay.
So Kent, do we have a to do or a task in the repo that explains this? Because this is actually this is a semantic change to the spec. The spec as it reads today is every did WebS must have in the also known as field a did carry and a did web. And we're creating another level of nuance here where we're basically saying there might be a did web if that's intended to be the case. If it's not, and per the um conditions that Sam just mentioned. If it's not intended, we will not include that. Like, we need the spec to explicitly say it will not be included in the also known as. Anybody at any time can just assume that a did WebS, you can get the did.json file for a did WebS by acting like it's a did web and ignoring, like, you, anyone can do that. It's just not a relevant endorsed action unless the conditions have been met, in which case then we will explicitly indicate the conditions have been met by putting in the also known as field. Is that a good way of saying it, Sam? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so we are changing the spec, Kent, and we need to make sure we do that explicitly and go through and make sure we're
Right.
consistent inside. Because I say right now, it's very, very clear, must have. Okay, cool.
Right.
That's good. That works. That's fine.
Yeah, I had it in my like date planner, my to-dos, but all this is I'm making the issue now.
Hmm. And then the other items that we can report on, the last meeting there was a decision to pull the who is elements out of the spec, and Kent has a PR open for that I have in my to-do list to review, which I will do, and that will then clean that up. I think at this point, then, in terms of the spec itself, it's probably content complete for the most part, because I believe you did merge, Kent, right? The PR that had the delegation stuff in it.
Yes, yeah, the delegation stuff is there and it works.
So what I'm trying to get at is I think we're at the point now where we're close to being able to review a feature complete spec. And it's now not an issue of we're not missing any features in the spec. It's just a question of polishing and fine tuning and then submitting for approval or whatever in terms of the spec. I believe I think that's where we are today. So I guess that would be just reporting to the group. So, it's possible that we could have this ready to, go through whatever the formal review and approval process is within the next month or two. I would think it's possible, certainly, if Kent and I can get this stuff taken care of.
I'll add just a little more there. So our pull request to the W3C did test suite has been merged.
Yep.
The other
So
thing
hang
that
on,
we
can
have,
we just stop for a minute, because there are the two issues. The first is the status of the spec at Trust over IP, and I just want to
Mhm.
like punctuate this. Like, I think we're feature complete essentially on the spec, and if anybody wants to take a look through the spec as it is published online, minus the fact that the who is stuff is coming out, like, it's feature complete. So if somebody sees something that we're missing, like, start to raise their hand now, because I think Ken and I are operating under the assumption that it is feature complete and we just are going to be doing editing and fine tuning and, blah, blah, blah. So that I'm going to make that statement. I'm going to pause for a minute. And then if anybody has anything to say on that, and then we're going to move on to the status of diff recommended status. Sweet. So the other thing that's in progress is diff recommended status. And in that world, there's been some movement. The first of which is what Kent's saying. We now do have did WebS in the W3C test suite passing, right, Kent?
Mhm. That's right.
Yeah. We have a couple of other items that need to happen in order to have all of the boxes checked from a W3C point of view. One of which is getting conditional proof 2022 formally listed as a did method extension. That ball is in my court, and I will look at that now that I'm kind of back in the saddle. Um, from a process point of view, we need to schedule the second deep dive with the diff did methods working group. Kent and I will talk, and we'll have that. Hopefully, that will have happened before this next meeting next month. There's no reason it can't. Like, there's the schedule's open at diff, and we've got 4 weeks, and so if we can just get our eggs in a basket or get our ducks in a row, whatever, we should be able to do that. And once the second deep dive has happened, the 60-day formal review period starts. And so it would be really nice. I think Kent and I had a goal to try to have the diff recommended status resolved before the carry conf. And I think that there still is adequate time for that because carry conf is what, like March?
April.
It's the
April
first week in
20,
April? Oh, last week in
no,
April?
third, no, the third week in April, the
Okay.
20th, week of the
There's
20th.
plenty of time. As long as we can get this taken care of before mid-February, we should be able to have it in place. So,
Yeah, that's 3 months from today,
uh-huh.
essentially,
Yeah, we have
for the
about a
carry conf.
month to get the 60-day waiting period starting. So, that's I think the, you know, conversationally, that's the status. Am I missing anything, Kent, that we want to report on?
Now, there's something minor on the spec for later, but from a did WebS diff recommended did methods, this is all.
Okay, cool.
So I want to suggest adding some additional language when you talk about the ACDC that permits the did WebS. One of the things that this does is that it allows you to revoke a did web did in the event, for example, that there has been a DNS hijack, and so without the did WebS having the AID, which allows you to verify that the host that you're talking to is actually the real host, um, if that has been hijacked so that they're doing an impersonation attack on the DNS host, you can revoke the did WebS to did permission, which means that then people know, oh, there isn't an alias. I can't trust any host unless it is a did WebS, not a did web. And that is an important security feature that should be highlighted because relative to, for example, the what is it, the group that this is getting put into at diff, what's it called, the
Diff recommended.
uh diff recommended, and what is the main base, what is the one main basis for the diff recommended, that it has certain minimal security properties.
Yeah. Well, the diff recommended criteria really, it's not, it's like diff, we're really careful about not making judgments about the implementation details of the did. We want the spec and all of the materials to be clear about the guarantees they make and don't make and
Yes, okay,
allow, so that's
yes,
it.
but
So
for
this
people
just
who
then
are
becomes
looking
a,
at it, this
yeah,
becomes a reason why you would use did
correct,
WebS
correct.
over any of the other ones. And certainly for the did skid, which does make a statement about security, you would, right? This is
Yeah,
also part of did skid. This
yes.
this is highlighting one of those security features that partial implementations of carry
Uh-huh.
don't support.
Yep, got it.
So just I'm just being a little bit political here.
Yeah, that's just fine. Kent, that can we, is that in the, so you were just creating that issue. Can we make sure that that comment basically is
Yes.
in there? So, because
Yep.
that's basically what Sam's asking us to do, is to make sure that there's a couple of sentences that we write that like explicitly calls out the like um reason for and importance of this particular feature of the spec of
And
did.
it includes not just permitting a did WebS, but also unpermitting a previous did web that has been compromised.
Hmm. And frankly, from a did method point of view, it's a pretty subtle, because like the only thing that could actually happen in that case, based on the spec as it is today and the did method spec as it is today, is you would remove the did web from the also known as.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty subtle distinction. I wish there were a
Yep.
more like other thing. I mean, this would require us filing another did method extension, but I
Yeah.
wish there were a
So
field that we could add that was like, do not trust, not alias, explicitly expand
Yeah.
or
Well,
something like
I'm
that. But
trying not to do. Yes, that's a valid concern, but that then
yeah,
adds additional
for
work and
sure. Yeah,
delay. So
yeah.
one of the because it is subtle, you want to at least call it out in the text and
Which
says,
actually means, Kent, we really probably need to be explicit we need to be explicit in the verbiage in the spec because it's not like the absence of a did web in the also known as array is significant. It means if the did web is not explicitly listed there, you may not trust a did web.
"Yep,
You
that's
must
what it
not
means."
trust the did
You
web
must not trust. That's
if
right.
it's not listed in the also known as.
It's not
And, and,
permitted
and
for
I
you
guess I
to. It's
should say,
not permitted. It's not permitted means you do not. This did web s is not permitting you to use a did web as an alias for
Correct.
whatever reason. It's not permitted.
Right.
now one cool thing we can do because we have the old designated alias ACDC and the new one is you can construct an allow and deny list dynamically based off of what's anchored to the kel. The latest stuff you have, you assume is the latest, and everything else is not allowed unless it's in the most current designated alias ACDC.
Yeah, that's cool. But like from the point of view of did method world, this absence or presence of a did web in the also known as array is very significant. So we need to be very clear about that. It's not just that like if it
Right.
doesn't happen to be there, somebody forgot or whatever, like you can't make that assumption. You have to assume if it's not there, that's an explicit choice. That means do not trust a did web. And
Got
if
that.
there's supposed to be a trusted did web, that absolutely needs to be explicitly included in the also known as, and the operator needs to have made that choice. So that also probably has some implications in the implementate the reference implementation, Kent. We may want to look at that too.
Okay.
But we'll
Got it
talk about
here.
this. You and I can talk about this. Yeah.
Okay. All right, I got all that here. Is there anything
Okay,
else we
cool.
want to add there? We've got about okay.
Yeah, no, I think this pretty much is the report, unless you have other just details you want to cover, Kent.
No, I believe that's it. There is just one open item for the implementation, which is the just what we're talking about here. I think the only other open item we're discussing about the specification is that I saw some comments from last year in April from Kevin on some things in the spec that looked a little off when I read the areas, and I agree that there need to be some changes. So from what I can tell, you and I and whoever would like to in the next couple of weeks here should do a final review of the spec, clarify some languages, see if there are things that either are out of date or just need to be reworded or removed. So there's need for a final edit, but constitutionally, what you said earlier, Jonathan, is accurate as far as it's feature complete. Now
Hmm.
we just need to tighten everything up.
Yeah.
And that's all that I have for today.
Yeah, cool. Any questions or comments from the group? Ed?
Yeah, I had a non-spec question about the usage of did WebS in the context of trust with a browser extension or the use of an end user in general. This is off topic, but very interested in this. If there's people that want to hang around for that question, that would be awesome.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything before we formally close the meeting? And then we'll just hang around to talk with Ed if we've got whoever's interested in that.
Yeah, can I bring up one thing? The conversation about did web
Yeah.
sparked something in my head. So if we're saying that you need to verify the ACDC in the kel to determine whether you can trust the did web or not, anyone who would be using a did web won't be looking at the kel and will never know whether they can trust it or not. So the
It's
fact that we're even supporting a did web means that we're adding a vulnerability, I think.
but
Because if
Phil, here's the thing. In the did world, there's only one thing you need to check, and that is the did web explicitly listed in the also known as array or not? If it's not, You don't have to do anything else. You just don't trust it.
Of what?
The did
The
method
did
document. The did document.
document.
When you
Right,
get the
but
did
it's
document back, if you just assume, so here's the scenario. I'm just going to assume that I can trust the did web because this is a web-based did method. So I'm just going to assume I can trust the did web. Um, I'm going to resolve the did web just like I do any other did web, and I'm going to get back the um, did.json file. When I read that did.json file, there's going to be an also known as array, and there's either going to be a did web listed explicitly, the one I just resolved in it, or not. If I resolve it and I get a did document back that does not have the did web URL listed in the also known as, I go, oh shit, I can't trust this.
yeah, but if someone DNS hijacks you and serves you up a bad one, then did carry hasn't protected you at
True.
all,
Yeah, that's true.
and that's a
No,
vulnerability in my mind.
yes, well, definitely. I mean, the fact that we even have did web s is we're acknowledging the fact that some people will trust a did web when they shouldn't.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is
That's
why I
what
wish
I've
there
done
were a
enough.
way to explicitly list it in the did document, but it would require us to file another document extension, you know?
Well, one way we could describe it is that the did document shows a best effort security posture, acknowledging that there is vulnerability.
Yeah. I mean, you're right though, Phil. True. Everyone should just noodle on that one. If someone
Yeah.
can come up with a solution that's, a better way of dealing with it before we formalize the spec, that would be great.
Well, Phil's premise is that somebody isn't going to be verifying a kel. So if they're not going to be verifying a kel, that they would the intermediate posture would be that they have somebody else that is serving up the did doc that does verify the kel, so they don't have to. And so the intermediate policy was, well, don't trust a did web did unless it's from a trusted resolver, a did resolver,
Yeah.
and then the trusted did resolver would verify the kel.
Yeah.
And so a did resolver can advertise and say, we verify kels on did WebS, did docs.
Yeah.
And untrusted resolvers would say, we don't verify kels.
I mean, in a way, the reality is that if you're going to treat a did web as like a did web, then you get precisely the security guarantees that did web gives you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you remember, Phil, the original reason was that we didn't want people being able to alias any did
Yeah.
web without
Mhm.
permission.
Right.
But now we're talking about the absence of any did web has some meaning, but only has meaning if you have a trusted resolver that is verifying the kel. Because an untrusted resolver could put the alias in without verifying the ACDC and just put it in there and say, hey, here it is, trust it.
Yeah.
Also, they could modify and hack any other field in the did document. Like it's
That's
no
right.
different than any other fields, right?
Yeah.
They could give you, they're probably giving you the wrong keys. Like they're probably doing all kinds of shit, right? Like, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
If you don't have a trusted resolver, you don't have a trusted resolver, and you're SOL.
Yep. Okay. All right. Thanks. That's it.
Cool. Any other questions or comments before we'll formally close the meeting, but we'll let Ed hang on for a minute.
I think it's worth just quickly looking at our action items.
Yeah. Okay,
And
cool.
I'll paste them down. So the action items we had from last time, I will move them forward again because they all still need to be done.
And I
I'll just
also
quickly-
we need to add a couple there. So we do need to get conditional proof 2022 formally listed as a did method extension. I feel like there may be one other. I think that's the main action item, but that action item actually has a couple of parts. So there's a couple of things that need to happen for that to happen. But I think if we just call it that, that's fine. We also need to schedule the second deep dive with the diff did methods working group. I think those are the two action items you don't have listed.
Okay, got those here. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, I think we're good then. Just now, anybody could leave and we could have a discussion
Yeah.
with
Thanks
Ed.
everybody for attending.
Oh, yeah. And the Carey Foundation meeting at the top of the hour, there's a presentation. Hank, do you remember who's presenting?
Ink is not here.
Oh, he dropped
It's
off. Yeah, there's.
the XML based reporting
Oh,
language,
X. So
XBRL.
anybody interested in XBRL and ACDCs for XBRL? Just a little ad blurb to attend the Carry Foundation community meeting that follows.
Cool.
Is it going to be under a different link or?
Same
Yeah,
place,
anybody have
no.
the
Yeah, it's
link?
under. It's a different. Yeah, you have to go to Linux Foundation, I'm sure, and get the right meeting link.
Is it through the Linux Foundation?
I don't think it's through
Okay.
Linux Foundation.
Oh, okay.
My,
Then it's definitely not this meeting link.
yeah, it's here. Let me pull it up. Where is that
Sam,
meeting?
do you mind sending that to me?
Yeah, I'll send it. I'll post it in our text.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay, let's I mean, in the
Yeah.
spirit of the fact that that meeting starts in 5 minutes, Ed, what were you wanting to cover?
Yeah, first of all, I appreciate your attention. So I'm building a browser extension, similar to what using Signify TS, similar to what Polaris Web Extension or Signify Browser TS did. Um, and I've been thinking about a particular. So first of all, assume that browser extensions can be trustworthy and are a good thing for this purpose of this conversation. There's debates against that. That's a separate debate. So the question is, how can best an end user of a browser experience and a browser extension best trust the website as being authentic, and vice versa? How the website trust the user as being authentically who they are? And obviously that latter one is answered, for example, by a signed presentation request and a presentation response to the website. But in terms of the user having additional guarantees that the website they're looking at is authentic, being controlled by a particular AID, did WebS seems like a great solution for that. And this is the question. If we were to flip it around, the browser extension could provide or could challenge the website and say, show me your credential with this nonce and other presentation request thing, and then it responds just simply with a signed credential or a signed AID essentially. So the question is, should it present a did WebS instead? Is that easier to do in terms of setting up the trust of the user in the website's authenticity?
I could take that.
Oh, okay, go ahead. I mean, I have a thought too, but go
So
ahead.
when you say simpler, I'm going to say it depends. So there's more machinery involved. And so if you're saying, how do I establish trust in a domain? Because that's what it sounds like the question is honest. Can I trust that
But
content
that's not
coming
really it.
from
Is it,
this
Ed? Is
domain?
it a domain you're trying to trust, or are you just trying to trust the end user?
No. That trusting the website, trusting the end user is we have solution for.
Mm-hmm.
It's the end user trusting the domain and the
Okay.
particular host and authority that it's seeing.
Okay.
That's a good catch, Jonathan. I wasn't thinking about the other side. So let's actually be explicit here. So we're saying the way that the website trusts the user is because the website explicitly chooses to trust an AID that's coming from the browser extension. So
No,
let's make sure we have that
a
covered.
signed AID with a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And now the other side of it is the domain. The user wants to know, is this the authoritative website committed to by the administrator of this website?
Correct.
And if that's the case, then I think didWebS is very well suited for that because you would look up the designated aliases ACDC from the KEL, or you'd look at the did doc, where you could start from the did doc, resolve the did of the website would somehow offer a did. You would pull the did doc, and then you could use the did doc if you wanted to do a second level verification. You go and pull the KEL and verify the designated alias to
Exactly.
ACDC yourself.
Exactly.
However, that does, like, you're assuming that the domain controller is hosting and running a did web has a did web as endpoint.
I don't want to assume that.
So then if you're not assuming that, then I don't think you can, I mean, like it's a great way to do it, but like also the website could just have a credential that they pass.
But
Like,
if you challenge it, let's just say a presentation request with some randomness and so forth, and it has to sign a presentation request, that's a little more bulletproof. And you could
yeah, but what I'm getting
correlate
at is
that
that
with
like
did WebEx.
the purpose of a did of any did is just discovering the keys, basically. That's what it's really at its root. That's what it is, discovering the public key, material. And there are lots of ways to do that. And if you don't want to assume that the domain controller is always must and always be running a did web, have a did web as endpoint and running a server and has like, then you just need to be more general than that. There may or may not be a did web s.
Yeah, I want the host to sign a challenge. Okay,
Mhm.
essentially. Okay,
Yeah.
we got to roll off into the other meeting, but
Yeah. Cool.
if you have any other thoughts, feel free to Discord me.
Yeah, let's
Sure.
chat. I do have a couple. We'll catch you later.
Okay.
Great.
All
Bye.
right. Bye.
Yes.